I have never hated to say I told you so, but I did in fact tell you so. That when Gregg Popovich, and Pop's been through a lot, right? His wife died a couple years ago, and he had a stroke this year. I said, yeah, that's probably it, right? That's probably the last that he'll coach for the San Antonio Spurs. Right? That was my guess. And now Mitch Johnson's going to take over. You heard it from Dan Byer. And, of course, part of that is Gregg Popovich going to remain on as president of the team. It will require less travel, less stress, and he'll still be able to be part of it. What's interesting to me is how you get people in the TV and radio world who are bright enough, but they want to say, well, this person should be, that person should be, how can you do this? Would we all agree that if you start, maybe we want to agree, if you were going to use one word to describe the San Antonio Spurs and how they operate and how they've played, and I'll grant you, it's been like almost a decade since they've been at the championship level. But if we asked ourselves honestly, hey, there's been 25 years of the Spurs being a very, very good franchise, and 5 or 6 of those years them being a championship caliber franchise. And I asked you to describe them in one word. There'd be 2 words I think that would come to your mind. 2 words. Dan Byer, guess one of those 2 words we would use to describe the San Antonio Spurs?
Doug, I honestly have no idea. I mean,
just I'm asking you. I say San Antonio Spurs organization. Just the first word that comes to your mind in describing them.
Consistency.
Ooh, that's not one I thought, but that's a really good one. Okay, it's solid. Jason Stewart. One word. I know what Jason Stewart's word is going to be. Okay, almost guess it. Jay Stu, what would the word be?
To describe the Spurs? Multiple championships.
Okay, that was more than one word.
See, this is not as easy of an exercise as you think, Doug.
It's okay.
Yes.
Listen, I can be wrong at things. It's fine.
Well, you're not wrong.
Chris Perfett, give me the word that you think of most with the Spurs.
Can I pick up the slack and do 2 different words? They're one word each, but I've got 2 different answers.
Go.
Big. Tend to have a lot of big men, good big men. Boring.
Boring is one. I thought there'd be 2 words that you'd say. Boring and smart. Right? We wouldn't describe them as fun. No one's ever gone like, what's fun? And I'm somebody, we went there for the Final Four. I enjoy San Antonio. I think San Antonio is just right. Like, I love the fact that you can get to Austin without maybe paying Austin prices. But no one says like, hey, San Antonio Spurs, and you're like, they're fun, they're exciting, they're thrilling, I would say boring is generally a thought of, maybe that's more fans, Dan, more fans, Jay Stu, but boring is a word, and I think smart is the other word. Man, maybe consistency, that's a good word because they have been consistent and they have been competitive. But part of that is because they've been kind of more solid than spectacular. And they've been smart in how they've been built. Right? Efficient is intelligent. Consistent it takes toughness and intelligence. I think the 2 words to describe them are boring and smart. And so who did they hire today to replace the senior most successful coach currently coaching in the NBA? A guy who was a nice player at Stanford in the early 2000s. A guy who, if you know him, he is those 2 things. Boring, smart. Right? It's perfect. So the point of it is, and you hire a coach that spent time in the G League. He's spent time working his way up in the staff. He's played just enough professionally. He's played overseas. He has an appreciation for the FIBA game as well. Because, of course, Pop, with his connections to USA Basketball, he's been around that as well. So you get a well-rounded guy who goes to Stanford, graduates after playing 4 years there, and that was back when Stanford was really, really good. Right? Plays professionally, starts his coaching career, works his way up from the G League to back of the bench, to front of the bench, to acting head coach, to head coach. Okay? It's a boring path, but it's a really, really smart move from the Spurs. So, Colin will do that kind of elevator pitch sort of thing, right? Where you go, hey, you gotta use, you gotta pitch me in 2 sentences what something is. I'll just use the word game, and the word game is pick out 2 or 3 words to describe individual words to describe the Spurs, and I like consistency. I like that. That's a good one. But I would say 2 others that you could put in that in with consistent would be boring and smart, and the Spurs knocked it out of the park, not because they hired the sexiest coach or the most fun coach or the most interesting coach or somebody who's going to play an interesting style or somebody who's going to freak out in the sidelines. They didn't do what the Lakers did, where you take a chance on somebody who's a former player and a TV and podcast personality. They didn't. They hired somebody from within who was both boring and smart. And the point to it is, I got a chance to spend some time with my daughter Harper yesterday. Congratulations to Harp. She was the Horseman of the Year for Oklahoma State's Equestrian in the Fences. Now, that doesn't mean that she was the Rider of the Year. The Horseman of the Year, as a freshman, she has to come in. She does everything except this year riding them in shows, right? But the point is that if you ask anybody about my daughter, they'll say, she really knows who she is. Right? And one of the keys to life is knowing who you are, right? Part of finding the right spouse is knowing who you are, so you know not just what you're attracted to, but what you need in your life. It's the key to finding the right job. What's the right job that will fulfill you, that will fill up your cup on a daily basis, that'll make you want to go to work more, will make you want to work at home and to perfect your job? All of these things. It all comes down to knowing who you are. And what the Spurs have done is they've planned. They knew this moment was probably coming. And they executed. And they executed in the type of fashion that the Spurs, it's a Friday, kind of a news dump Friday. Kentucky Derby's coming up tomorrow. The Oaks are today. It's not the top level story of the day. It's whatever. Hey, we're hiring a guy that you probably forgot about that's boring and smart. And we're going to just keep building this thing the same way it was built previously, which was had David Robinson, built a championship roster, and then ultimately added Tim Duncan, and then had several incarnations of greatness with Tim Duncan and Manu Ginobili and Tony Parker. And now they have Stephon Castle, they have Victor Wembanyama, they added, what's the point guard they added?
De'Aaron Fox.
De'Aaron Fox, right? Very likely to add somebody else in the offseason, and kind of away they go. The point is, the Spurs know who they are. They are boring. They are smart. And when you hire somebody who replicates that in terms of as a hire, that shows that you know who you are as a company, who you are as a team, who you are as a franchise. And knowing who you are is a big piece of the pathway to success.